It's actually smaller than I thought it would be. Not the first time I've heard that in my life, but I digress. Probably in a normal scenario, it would be more of a dribble than this hard squirt. But I digress. I digress a third time in this video. But I digress. It's up and running and ready to go. ASUS's BIOS flashback features are just getting worse as time goes on, but I digress, whatever. In fact, I'm not sure the Asus one actually is, but I digress. Would get you in like the top 15 list in the world if you had a million. But I digress, which is kind of funny because it's the same silicon, it's the same process and it's the same cores, but whatever, I digress. I don't know if he's allergic to peanuts. No, packing peanuts. Okay, stupid joke, I get it, dad joke. But I digress. It really does look like a VHS tape, but I digress. Story of sadness and despair, but I digress. Sometimes it's annually, depending on the way the investments are set up, but I digress. Besides, well, that's about the quality as sometimes you can expect when you put out a little public blast, but I digress. Most people don't. It depends on your work, I guess, but I digress. Again, the theory.
Tech, lifestyle, gaming, and whatever else we feel like is usually 80% cars, but I digress.
I think it was actually called the GT40 back then, but I digress. Sounded like a lawyer wrote that, but I digress. Honestly, I think it's stupid to regulate something that's also battery controlled or battery powered, but I digress. Kind of an ugly accordion gap, which is kind of unfortunate, but I digress. The fact that they went with the 3070, but I digress. PCIe Gen 4 had like the shortest lifespan of any of the PCI generations, but I digress. To this day, we still believe control is nothing more than a playable benchmark, but I digress. Pulling an orange or brown or, hey, yellow and red, but I digress. More modern, more cutting edge tech games are gonna probably push a 1080 to its limit, but I digress. Running 4 sticks of memory right now in XMP and DDR5 is nearly impossible, but I digress. I don't do that very often. Sometimes I feel like I need a shower afterward, but I digress. I use that word loosely in terms of the entire organization, but I digress. And this is on here because I'm actually gonna be working on this again. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the video, but I digress.
And you really had fun making that video, but I digress.
The thing, I think it was more than 8 years ago. It's getting closer to 10 at this point, but I digress. Everything else is toolless, but I digress.